I want to welcome you back to our Business Mastermind. If you were with us last year, and if you are watching the video and new to the Business Mastermind, we're excited to have you here. We're excited at what we do together and excited to have you join us. We're moving into our 2023 year, which is our second year, and I'm excited to get started today. We have Everything that we did last year is available online at unitysouthcentral.org in the archives. So you can go back and watch all of last year's mastermind presentations. Let me tell you a little bit about how we work. And if you are coming back, we'll just refresh a little bit on what it is that we're up to. So every mastermind group that works together works a little bit differently. We all have different ways. Some masterminds put a subject on the table and simply discuss. They meet once a month, once a week. We work a little bit differently. Our first meeting each month is on the first Wednesday of each month, and we have a given presentation. I will be teaching something that month. So we gather and we learn together. Then we take for the next 2 weeks what we learned into our minds and our hearts for consideration. And we look to see what we can apply in the work that we're already doing. And on the third Wednesday of the month, we gather again to discuss what we have observed, what we've learned, or what question was put in front of us. And that's how we go month after month. So this is a leadership group. It's called a Business Mastermind, and we are masterminding business circumstances through the lens of who we are as leaders, how we lead, what it is that we want to develop in ourselves as leaders, what our strengths are, and sometimes too what our weaknesses are. So how do we identify those? How do we know what it is that we need to improve as leaders? Today we're going to start by talking about how your spiritual business differs from other businesses. And I think that's an important place to start because the nature of our spiritual business, and make no bones about it, we are in a spiritual business. The nature of our spiritual business is to promote personal growth and interconnection with the divine rather than consumption and profit. And that makes our business different from most businesses out there. There are a few personal growth businesses that would have things in common with us, but largely business is run and measured based on our ability to create a consumer desire for a product and the ability to have them use that product long term so that they're paying for the product. We're not motivated for that as much as it might seem like that's a big consideration. For most ministers and most board members, we're pretty consistently looking at what it is that we have to do to be able to make enough money to pay the bills so that we can keep doing what it is that we do, which is helping people find their path to the divine, helping people find their own personal connection. Unity is different even from traditional churches because we are less aimed at telling you what path you're supposed to follow and more aimed at giving you questions and considerations so that you can find the path that is personal to you. So if you wanted to say the primary, what's the really big thing that makes this spiritual business different from others, it's that we're all about people. And people are not consistent. People are different. All people are different. They're different ages, they're different generations. They have different ideas about what's right and wrong, different core values. They have different problems that they're dealing with. And so because our business is about people, it's sometimes hard to pin down what it is that we're doing from day to day. And that's largely is the reason that we're having this business mastermind, so that we can work together as a team to walk our way through the very unique challenges that are part of being in a spiritual business. So I'm going to start today with a model, and this is a model for sacred space. And there are a couple of things that I want to tell you. First of all, I like all forms of spirituality, and I've done lots of study with different spiritual formulas. And one of the areas of spirituality that I really enjoy a lot is numerology. I love the science of numbers and the way numbers connect spiritually. And so when we look at the numbers, at the number 2023, 2023 is a 7 year. And seven, the energy of seven is about coming full circle back to yourself. So if we apply that to our business, then we're looking at coming full circle through everything that we've all learned so far on our individual paths as leaders and figuring out, coming full circle, where are we really? Who are we now? Are we who we started out as? Are we someone different? Is our business different? And what are we, if we come to the core of who we are this year? What is that core? So I like the number seven for lots of reasons. Indigenous tribal cultures often consider it takes 6 points for sacred space: earth, air, fire, water, above and below. And we'll talk about all of those. The seventh point to that, and the point that is impossible to live without, is yourself. And that's in many traditions, it's an unspoken point. We don't point that out. It's an unspoken kind of the secret to the formula for creating a sacred space or a sacred community. So I want you to look really closely at the model that I've put up here, at the image. I want you to go to the very center of it and notice the kind of starlight in the center. And then I want you to notice that there are 6 points around that. And that everything that is built geometrically outside of that begins with the central point. And I want you to notice that for yourself, because it doesn't matter whether you're the board president or you're the administrator or you're the minister or you're the music director. You are a central point to a structure of people that are moving around you. And I'm going to move you through a model today that asks you to consider, from your perspective, what kind of sacred space you are holding as a leader, because you are holding the center of some community. If you're the board president, you are holding the center of the structure, the sacred space that is the board. If you are the minister, you are holding the sacred space, the center of what is the structure of your community. If you are an administrative leader, obviously you are holding a central hub of communication. All of these pieces could be put into a visible structure, and that's what we're going to do today, is look at what the visible structure is. And again, this is a model. So we can talk a lot about business ideas, but sometimes it's really helpful to have a picture in your head of where you are. And I really liked this particular structure because it shows a point in the center and it shows those 6 spokes around. And then it continues to grow and grow and grow exponentially. And you begin to see how all of this connects, how all of these smaller pieces of community or expanded pieces of community all come back to one central point, which is you as a leader. I know that a lot of communities, ours included right now, have a focus on moving away from what we call a minister-centric model. I understand that that is an important part of our work. As leaders, each of us is central to some particular responsibility within the community. And it's impossible to lead without having some central core of power. So while we build around the mission of the community, there is a leadership center that is necessary. And there are several ways to apply this. So we're going to start by looking at the essential energy centers of your spiritual business. These are places, we call them energy centers, because these are places that you actually expend energy or gain energy in the work that you do as a leader. And so I want to tell you that this model corresponds to what I just showed you for sacred space. It also corresponds with the chakras in the body. So if you have some understanding of the chakra system, some of that will make sense to you. I put this together around energy centers because there's an understanding spiritually that life shows us what we need to understand, that the cosmic law, the way the universe works, is not accidental. It's brilliant. It's a cosmic structure that we exist within that guides us and gives us constant input, is constantly telling us and showing us through life how we can do more, expand more, connect more deeply, all of that. So that's why this particular model. So I want to start with what would be the root chakra, or the foundation of all of our energy centers. What is at the bottom? What is holding us? Which is the center of stability. The center we think of as the earth center. It's where our feet touch the ground. And our feet touch the ground in our spiritual business, first of all, in a very physical way, in the location that we have and in the environment that we create there. So we spend quite a bit of time dealing with locations and environments. What does it feel like to be in this space? Do we need this space? Is this space a real anchor? Is it an imagined anchor? We spend a lot of time on the foundational things that we need to have to build upon. We spend time on our finances. That's always a big piece of our work. We spend time making sure that we're running legally, which for us more often than not means that we're in line with our bylaws. So what are our governance systems? What kind of professional support do we need? Who do we have on our staff? Who's our team? And those things can be really different. Your staff takes care of one particular part of your business, but your team can be your volunteers and how your community plugs in these very real day-to-day ways. Who shovels the sidewalk when it's snowy? Who waters the lawn during the summer and makes sure that the sprinkler system gets turned on? Who takes care of cleaning the sanctuary? Who is out buying food for fellowship or making sure that the dishwasher gets unloaded? These are very real things that are part of our day-to-day business. So this is a center of your business that you probably spend a certain amount of time, your time, taking care of. The plan or the structure of how you operate falls in here. And that means your day-to-day plan. We open up at 9 o'clock. We break for lunch at this time. We have a staff meeting on Tuesdays. Our board meets once a month on this day at this time. Someone is responsible for letting the community know what happened at the board meeting and posting the minutes. This is all your stability. It holds the foundation. Other things can be stacked on top of it, but if this center is out of balance, it's very hard to grow on top of this if you don't have this center in balance. So for an example of that would be if you're in the process of selling your building or moving into a new building, there is an unseating of stability that happens around that. And a lot of your focus will have to come back to, how do we hold our community together while we make this shift that has been, really, this is where we are. This is who we are, and you can find us in this place. How do we hold our community strongly together? So just take a minute as you're looking at this, and right off the top of your head, ask yourself, How is your center of stability? If you had to rank your center of stability between 1 and 5, with 5 being the top score, what would you say is your score in your center of stability? And write it down for me. Take a minute and write it down, because we're going to go through 7 centers, and I want you to just write center of stability, earth, and whatever your score is. And I'll give you just a minute to think about that. Not too much though, because I want you to go right off the top of your head. So we're going to go to the second center. And again, these correspond with the chakras. So we would be moving from the root chakra up to the belly chakra. And this is our center of creativity in the sacred structure, in the structure of sacred space. This is the center of fire. And it is exactly what you think of it. Fire is where things light up. The center of creativity is where we often confront the difference between beliefs and education. And so what have we come to believe is true, and what were we taught is true? And those are really important questions when you come to this center of creativity. What were you told is how things are supposed to be? And are they actually that? Do you actually really believe that what you were taught is true? Or have you come to believe something different? So we think of creativity as this place that we make something new, but creativity can, in our structure, in our spiritual structure, can often be how we wrap our head around what we're doing, what it is that we've created as our understanding of what it is we are up to. Good morning, Robert. Nice to see you. So in this center of creativity, and Robert, we're talking about the different centers of energy that are your business, that are your spiritual business. So in this center of creativity, which is the fire center, you're going to be spending some time evaluating whether what you believe is true, or whether what you've been taught matches up with what you believe. It's also a place where you have, it's where you handle the problems that come up just like this. Oh my gosh, we have to close down the bathroom on Sunday. We have a plumbing problem. Things are frozen. What are we going to do? So what is the spontaneous answer to that? Do we rent a porta potty, or do we close down the building? Or do we rent a different place to bring our people together because the health board won't let us meet if we don't have an operational bathroom? So the center of creativity is where you do your firefighting. That's what I want you to remember about it. You are a firefighter when you are handling the problem that is up right now. Whatever the next problem is, and whatever the next problem is, and whatever the next problem is. And you can become a firefighter to your own detriment. If everybody is used to you coming up with an answer right now, we have to fix this right this minute, you can become a firefighter. And in your job as a leader, it will impact the quality of the decisions that you make. So you want to think about how you use your center of creativity, your energetic center of creativity, whether it allows you to look for inspiration. You might use this center of creativity by being a person who is following lots of social media lists for ministry so that you're gaining new ideas. Or you might be reading books that orient you toward leadership. That could be a way that you're using your center of creativity to inspire yourself, to be able to come up with some new ways of doing things. You could be connecting in with experts and trends that are showing you how business in general is changing, and in addition, how the business of spirituality is changing. Another kind of detrimental way that we use our center of creativity is that we start watching what other people are doing, and instead of looking for inspirational ideas, we use that input that we get to convince ourselves that other people are so much better at doing this than we are. And we start to feel the competition. Like, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough. Now I am creating a negative story in my own head, and I'm identifying how I can prove myself true, right? I'm looking for what everybody else is doing so much better. So when you're activated in the center of creativity, you want to notice if you're firefighting, and you want to notice if getting inspired is taking you into a story of competition. None of us are meant to be in competition. Each of you are serving a unique community that is there moving with and around you because of the gifts that you bring. And you are not meant to be anyone else or do what anyone else does. You are the perfect person at the perfect time in the perfect place to do what these people need right now. And that is why Spirit has called you into leadership. So it's really important when you're focused on your center of creativity that you let go of any ideas about competition. This is also where we get the benefits and the stuckness of our ideas around attraction. As leaders, we can feel like we're not leading well enough because people don't just jump on board and follow it because we said so. Because if we were such great leaders, wouldn't they come on board with us? And the reality is that that kind of attraction can become an egocentric kind of attraction that allows you again to be in judgment of yourself instead of realizing that the skills that you bring to this job may be the skills that allow there to be friction and conflict. And friction and conflict, friction, when we do this, it warms up, doesn't it? Friction will warm things up, and friction will soften things. It's uncomfortable. We know that tension is uncomfortable. The pull of tension is uncomfortable. And as leaders, our job is to be able to hold the tension, to actually allow it to pulse a little bit, to bring more good ideas on the table. And from those good ideas, we have the opportunity, again, to be creative and to launch and bloom into something we haven't been before. So this second center of creativity can go out of balance according to what we do with the stories that we tell ourselves. It's particularly important to me that you ask yourself if you're a firefighter. Particularly important for you to know that if you feel like your work is firefighting, because if you're spending a lot of time firefighting, you are subject to burnout. It's not by accident that we call it burnout. It simply means that you have not had the time to be slow and contemplate. You have to spark by adrenaline over and over how we fix this thing that's broken. So if you find that this center in that way is active, then I want you to make note of that. We're going to talk more about that this month. Right now, I'd like you to consider your center of creativity, the center of creativity that is your community. And on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being your highest, I want you to consider how often you have your focus here. Do you have your focus here most of the time? That might be a 5. You have your focus there as much as half the time, a little more than half the time. That's going to be a 3 or a 4. Or you hardly have your center, your focus there. If you never have your center there, then it's a 0, isn't it? So write down your center. Just write it on a piece of paper because we're going to talk about it. And we're going to move to our next center, which as you move up the chakra system is to move into the center of action that is just at the navel. The center of action is the air center in that particular system, and it is the place where we give direction to our thoughts and our desires. So the center of action doesn't get much use unless we know what the outcome is we're trying to get to. This can be a really a really confusing center because we can feel like we're doing things all the time, and likely we are. But to balance the center of action and use it effectively, we need to know what it is we're trying to accomplish and be on purpose. And that's very different than just being in action. When this center is out of balance, we are moving and doing things all the time, but we're not stopping to see what we're creating and whether our actions are giving us the desired outcome. We have no measurement system in place. So, for example, we spend a lot of time putting up social media posts, but we have no way of knowing whether anybody's reading them and whether they're taking action. So correspondence might be, we're going to run an ad, a Facebook post or an Instagram post for this class. We're going to run it once a week over the next month, and the last week we're going to run it 3 times. And we're going to correspond that to the number of people who attended, because we can see how many people saw the post. We can look at the post and see whether people liked the post or interacted with the post. So we either know they don't like the class, the class is interesting to them, and did they actually show up? If they showed up, great. If they didn't show up, why didn't they? Was the cost too high? Was it a wrong day of the week to have it? That kind of analysis gives you insights into your community. And they sound like small details. They feel like small details. But when we measure things and we really begin to cross-reference what we tell people and what people actually do in response, we are more and more learning how to tune into the needs of our community and better serve them. And remember where we started with this. What makes us unique in the world of business is that our business is people. Our business is to understand people, to understand in particular the people that we serve. So if we fail to analyze what's working, it's very difficult for us to improve our service. And that's part of our objective, isn't it? To do the best job that we can for the people we're in service to. This process of measurement is something that we're going to come back to this year and spend a full month on. How do we really measure things? What are good formulas and processes we can use to measure and analyze the outcomes of what we create? So in order to have this center in balance, we have to be creating a desired outcome and measuring whether it's coming. And we also have to have a certain amount of courage and risk, because if you only run the safe ideas through here, you'll never know what will really work with your community. It's when you throw a new kind of action in. What if we did this? Let's try it and see what happens. The point of the center of action is research and getting to know your people better, and then doing what it takes to get them engaged. This is where your community engagement happens. So what stops us from doing well in this center is our time investment. How much time will we give to creating engagement with the people we serve? It's very time consuming and incredibly important to our ability to retain our members, incredibly important to our community feeling like it wants to financially support us, support what our larger mission is, incredibly important also to your individual health. Sometimes what happens with this center of action is that we become the only people engaged in it. This is a place where it's very valuable to have a team. This center of action is a really good place to get people on board with you, because it does take a lot of time. So if you look at your center of action, your community engagement, and your planned direction forward and the measurement of it, where do you rank on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being the highest? Where are you right now? Right off the top of your head, what do you think? Just write it down on your piece of paper. And we're going to move to the next center, which is the center of passion. And this falls at the heart chakra, which is, where our passion often lies, between the belly and the heart. This, in terms of sacred space, is your water center. So I want you to think a little bit about water. I want you to think about the fact that water flows where it will move around any obstacle. Water is going to flow where it wants to go. It's very hard when water is loose to control it, isn't it? It's going to flow around anything you use to try and stop it. It's going to flow, and it's going to create its own path. And that's what happens when our passion is good, when our passion for what we're doing is high. We can find a way around just about anything. We can figure out a way to make something happen because we feel passionate about it, and we're just going to keep flowing around whatever the obstacles are until we figure out what it takes to make our passion come to life. This is our heart center, and this is a very individualized center for leaders. About what the difference between obligation and passion. I have this job and I have to do it because I am obligated to do these things. Or I have this job, I get to do these things, and I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to do it. May not always go my way, but I'll find a way that I'm happy with, and I'll continue. We can get really caught up in a box that says this is the right way, this is the way we've always done it, this is how this thing gets done, and lose our passion and our joy. And this, your center of passion is contagious. If you are passionate, your community will catch that contagion. So it's important to look at from a very personal point of view. It's also important to look at in the greater scheme of your community, because this center, this heart center, is where we deal with the emotions of life. And the emotions of life in our spiritual business have to do with the emotions that people are experiencing in the world around us. A lot of times the emotions that they're feeling are why they have come to see us, because they are uncomfortable with their emotions. They are uncomfortable. They are feeling sad. They are feeling lonely. They are feeling disconnected from the divine and without purpose. They are emotionally absent from their own heart. They don't feel passionate about anything. And so we can get sucked into that really quickly because there's so much of it. It's what people bring to our doors, is the difficulties that they're experiencing in life. And the last few years have been very challenging for people. The world is struggling right now for sure. And so it can feel, we were talking earlier about tension, the tension between trying to stay passionate and excited about your life and dealing with what can feel like a vampire sucking the energy out of you because there's so much need. This is a really important point of conflict for most leaders in the world right now. In every job, not just in our area of spirituality, but in every job, because it is such a challenging time to be on the planet. So we have many tools to use to keep ourselves in a passionate place. And it's also important that we don't spiritually bypass here, that we don't think it's so much our job to hold the passion of community that we're not actually noticing and engaging with our own emotions. This is a center of authenticity. This center reflects your ability as a leader to be authentic with your community when you have challenges that you're facing. Because if you can be passionate and loving about them, and the passion that you're going to feel is the love that you have for them. If you can feel that and still be a person who is facing and moving through your own challenges, you give your community hope that they can find that deep love of life and still move through what is difficult at this time. When you put yourself out of balance and you feel like it's your job to have a smile on your face every moment and to show everybody how all the tools that we have work so well, but it's not what's really happening inside of you, you are out of integrity with yourself, my friend. You are out of integrity with yourself, and that will affect who you are as a leader. And people feel something more than your words. We have to remember that we are energetic movement. This is what we are. And as much as we want to hold certain things inside of ourselves because it might impact someone else, we as people have a way of tuning into the energy of each other. So it's okay. If nobody has said this to you, I want to really make sure you hear the permission giving of, you're a leader, you're going to have bad days. That doesn't mean your center of passion isn't working. It means your passion right now is in living from your authentic experience. It's a passion that isn't, we tend to take that word passion and go, passion means I'm excited, I'm ready, let's go make something happen. That's not always what passion is. Sometimes passion is deeply personal and interior, and it's a commitment that we have to savor life, to experience life in all of its extremes, to experience the highs and the lows, and to really live from what it means to be human on the planet. So it's important to look at what your center of passion is doing. Also important to remember that dealing with other people's emotions, that's what we do as leaders. That's why we're here, because we care about those emotions. We care about the people having them. This is a center that asks you, what is the benefit to you of doing what you're doing? And there is always a benefit to you. You wouldn't be doing it if there was no benefit. What is the benefit? Be very honest with yourself. What is the benefit? I'll tell you, one of the big insights for me after I retired was that I came to really understand that spirituality is that spiritual leadership is a daily practice. And it kept me on my game every single day because I was either talking to people or I was studying. So it kept me in my own spiritual game consistently. My tools were clean and shiny and ready to use. And when I stepped out and wasn't doing that work every day, my tools dimmed a little bit. I had to remind myself, oh yeah, I have that meditation in my toolbox. I have that journaling process in my toolbox. These are things that I could use. So what are the benefits to you? You need to know that, because on the days that this job is hard, those benefits, knowing what those benefits are, will help you to keep your story from spiraling down. You'll be able to say, yes, this is true, and this is also true. What are the benefits of what you do to the people you serve? This center of passion is where we ask that question. What are the benefits to the people we serve? In both hard, tangible benefits and intangible benefits. Tangible benefits, they get 25 extra hugs every week. Intangible benefits, they go to bed at night feeling like there's a spirit watching over them. There's something moving through them, as them, from them, and they're connected. How much time do you spend thinking about that? Considering the benefits to you and the benefits to others. And how much time do you spend defining your impact, which is different than measuring if a program worked. Defining impact is, are the people in your community changed by what you do? Is your community changed because you exist? Do you make a difference in the greater community because you are there? Have you defined the impact? Do you see the impact? Are you looking for it? Because when you know what the impact is, it makes a difference. Defining the impact happens after you've put something in place. We built a school in Africa, in Uganda, and from the school came a soccer team and kids having real soccer balls to play with, and a life where refugees don't have the opportunity to feel like the world cares about them. They got the chance to both get educated and have some fun and learn that people clear on the other side of the planet cared about them. Is that an impact? Absolutely. Will it change the world for those people? Yes. When you know what your impact is, when you can define things, you give your after report to your community. We did this thing and the impact was this. This is why our community matters, because we are making a difference in the world. We are improving life. So in order to have that story, to share that story, you have to be watching. Your center of passion has to be active. So take a minute now and consider, just based on what you know, on a scale of 1 to 5, how often do you visit your center of passion? With 5 being the highest and 0 being if you don't see it, if you don't do this work at all. Just notice. There's no right or wrong. Nobody's going to judge your response on this. This is for you to consider what's going on in these centers. So let's look at the below in the earth, air, fire, water, above and below kind of circular structure that is your community. This is traditionally is the feminine energy. It's traditionally meaning it is feminine energy, the divine feminine energy is tangibility. If you think of it like the mother births a child, you get an actual baby. It's not a concept. The mother births a child and you have it for the next however long you're blessed with it. It's the same, the earth beneath your feet, the living structure that constantly is renewing itself, that is showing you what life is. So this is the center of communication, and it falls right here. And the reason it's the center of communication is because God created God created life with words and sounds. This is how we create. We open our mouth and we let a sound come forward. We have an idea. We speak it out into existence. We create in a very tangible way. I need you to go and do these 3 things. We give direction and we create. Without this, it's much more challenging. It's much more challenging when you don't have your voice to be able to create in your life, because that by the sound of our voice, we bring together all kinds of energies. So this center of communication is how we use our personal stories. Our personal stories come from experience, and experience is different than education. Experience tells you something. Education gives you knowledge. You can process it. It lives up here somehow. Experience lives in all of your being. The cells of your body hold your experience. And this center of communication is about how you bring your experience into the story of your community and how you bring the story of your community to your community. What is the experience that people have with you? What's the story you tell about your community? When someone comes in the first time and they're brand new, what do you most want them to know about who you are? How do you know whether they fit or not? And how do they know if they fit or not? If you think this way, this is probably not your place. If you think this way, you found your family. How do we communicate these pieces? What is the message we want people to hear, and how are we going to deliver it? And so marketing often gets put into this, but this is more than marketing. This is your relationship center. This is whether or not, because in order to have the story of the experience of your community, you have to listen to your community. It's not just what you put at them, but it's asking questions and hearing the stories of who they met and how they connected and how this community is making a difference for them. And we can get so busy as leaders that we're so busy in our outward messaging that we completely forget our job is to listen. What experience is your board having? What is it like to be on the board for them? Why would they do it again? Why wouldn't they do it again? What is the experience of your music team? What do they love and what do they not? What is the experience of your tech team? What's the experience of your administrator? What's the experience of your usher? Do you know? Or do you just see them there and consistently are grateful that they show up? What's happening for them is this center to really work requires you to ask questions. How do you like being an usher? You know, I've never asked you this, but how do you like being an usher? Why do you show up over and over to do this? What do you love about it? Not only does it give them pause to think, which now reinforces for them, I love it because I get to see all my friends. I love it because I get to greet people and make friends and they know me and I know them. And it feels useful. And I have a reason to come besides just sitting in a chair. You know, it tells them, it gives you the opportunity to say, wow, those are really powerful gifts that you give. Thank you. And when people are seen and appreciated for what's real for them, as opposed to what's real for you, it's so much more meaningful. When they really get appreciated for what they think they're contributing versus what you think they're contributing, it feels entirely different. They feel seen. And that's a powerful piece of this center. It's a place where we gather the stories and we also share the stories. But the gathering in is equally and sometimes more important. So this is also where we tell the stories of our evolution and our tradition. This is why we do what we do over and over, because it has become meaningful for us in this way. And this is why we should change. This is where we can change. And evolution and tradition always have to be in balance. The focus will be on one and then it will go back to the other. That energy is a figure eight. The energy of evolution and tradition is a figure eight, and it needs to be moving. If it gets stuck on one side or the other side, it doesn't work very well. So you have to be moving between those two things. It's very much a flow. So think about your center of communication. How much real communication do you have? Do you know the stories of your community? Do you give them a chance? One of the things that I love doing is a member dinner once a month with a small group, 8 to 10 people, where you can ask, tell me about what you love here. And all your job is to do is eat dinner and listen. And let other people kind of cross-pollinate with their stories. It helps people to connect. This storytelling helps people connect. Do you create opportunities for people to tell their stories about why your community is a blessing in their life so that they can hear it from each other and not just you? So on a scale of 1 to 5, where are you in your center of communication? How would you score yourself in your center of communication? The next center is the center that we place in the above, which is considered to be masculine energy, and masculine energy in the way that we think about the divine that inspires us. Not necessarily that God is a man on a cloud, but there's a kind of masculine energy that's very directive and that is not the tangible part of spirituality, but the intangible inspiration that we receive. So We think of this as the center of innovation. It's the center that falls at the third eye. It's the center, which is where we think so often of the intuition. Something came to me. So I like to think of this as the center of Immaculate Conception. If you grew up Catholic like I did, you heard about Immaculate Conception and thought it only ever happened to Mary. But if you have gotten out into the world and studied the Immaculate Conception story, it crosses almost all faiths. And Immaculate Conception is basically this idea that we are seeded by the divine to birth something. That there is a gift that comes from the divine that is birthed through us. And all of us have that. We have all had the experience of Immaculate Conception where an idea popped into our head. We know we didn't think it. Or we said, God, I just need some help here. I don't know what to do. And an answer came that was one that you couldn't have possibly thought up, but it dropped in. Or you were speaking to someone and your mouth opened up and the words that came out were the seeding of the divine and absolutely not what was in your mind. We all have that. So this is the center of Immaculate Conception, where we allow the Holy to move through us, as us, and from us. Where we really recognize that being the Holy doesn't mean that we're always planning things. It means that the Holy moving as us sometimes shocks the hell out of us. Sometimes we just have an experience we could not even have imagined. So this is where innovation comes in. It's intuition versus instinct. Instinct says, stop right now. And intuition says, wait a minute, just do this. It's a very different thing. It's your aha moments. It's being nimble. It's being willing to open and allow Spirit to guide. And because as leaders, control is an issue, how we control what's happening where. When is this happening? That has to happen before this can happen. If this happens first, this isn't going to work. Who made sure that got taken care of? Did somebody follow up on this? The nature of our job as leaders is to control all the moving parts so that everything works well and we don't have collisions. And so what can happen, because then that's very much your foundation, what can happen because we're so tied up in that is that we completely lose our center of innovation. We completely lose our opportunity to just allow divine guidance to show us the next step on the path. To be still and at peace and confident that something is coming, that we don't have to plan it. We don't have to plan everything. That the universe has our back is how I like to think of it. The universe has our back and something is going to come through us that, we didn't have to think up. It doesn't always have to be us as leaders who have the answer or the way. Sometimes there is a surrendering to a bigger idea. And is this part of how you see life? Do you give yourself the opportunity to allow for this? This happens because you make time for your own meditation. It happens because you do your own journaling. It happens because you ask in the moment of unsurety. You say, let me give a few small moments to Spirit to see if there's something more that I didn't think of that might come through. This is an important center, so give some consideration on a scale of 1 to 5. Where is this center for you? How often do you use it? And is it active? It's really easy to turn this one off. And our theology does a little bit around that too, because we know that we're God expressing. So we have a hard time sometimes letting ourselves be God expressing in our gigantic God self. We kind of want to be God expressing as the human we are, which, makes us want to think through things. But the invitation is to be God expressing as God, not God expressing just as you. So give yourself a score there between 1 and 5. And this last center is the center of connection. This is the center of the circle that I showed you in the original model. That at the center is you. All of these things happen around you. We all are the center of our own world. This doesn't mean that you're the most important thing that ever happened wherever you are, because none of us wants to be in that place. We work very hard as leaders to be humble and in service. But the world is revolving around, your world is revolving around you. And all of these centers don't work if you're not plugged into them. Without you, they aren't happening in your world. So this is the center of self that has to do with self-care, with how you take care of your day-to-day needs, has to do with your own inner knowing. Are you in touch with your inner knowing? Not just the inner knowing for your community, but the inner knowing that is, this is mine to do or this is not mine to do. This is a big place for, is this yours to do? Sometimes everybody around you wants something to happen and you know it's not yours to do. And all you can do is say, that's an interesting idea. Who amongst you would like to take that on? Don't make an excuse for why it's not you, because it's not yours to do. You know it's not yours to pick up. And if you pick it up, one of my teachers, my Wichol teacher once told me there's really only one sin, and that's to steal someone else's lesson. And so I think of that often when I have to say that is not mine to do. Whatever the lesson is about that, I know at the core of my being, this is not mine to take on. This is someone else's. So I would love to see that happen. I wonder who will pick this up. Maybe someone will, maybe somebody won't. But that connection to yourself, that checking in, just because you're the leader doesn't mean that you have to do everything. In fact, one of your strongest skills as a leader is your capacity to make change and choice. Where can you make change and where can you choose not to? Because it's not yours to do. This is a place of collaboration. You can support anybody in their good work. This is where you teach people collaboration. You teach them how to work with you, first of all. Have you given any thought to how you teach your community the best way to work with you? We all have different things that we appreciate. For me, it's a pet peeve of mine if somebody hits the door and says, I know you're really busy, but blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, if you know I'm really busy, then why not walk in and say, I know you're really busy. I wonder if I could schedule some time with you in the next couple of days. I would be so grateful. Yes, let's get you on the calendar. Thank you so much for caring for me. So oftentimes I have to show people that. I have to say, I know you're really busy. Yes, I really am. Let's schedule an appointment because what you just told me, I'm not going to remember. And if I can work with you on an appointment that works for both of us, it's going to give us a chance to accomplish something together. So how good are you at teaching people how to collaborate with you? How that all of that falls into that self-care kind of process. And do you understand the power of your true gifts? Have you really spent any time knowing what you're good at and what you're not? What's your zone of genius? What are you really good at and what can you say you're not good at all? Because what you're not good at, you need somebody else to do. Don't waste your time at something you're not good at. Find someone who not only is good at it, but loves doing it. I am lousy at building websites. You could put me in front of the computer all day long. I would be bald by the end of the day. So, what is it that you love doing? Understanding where your gifts are and bringing your gifts forward allows you to also spotlight other people's gifts and bring those forward. And that's a big part of what we do as leaders. It's a big and important part of how we do things. So I've given you a lot of information. I don't even know where we are with time, 11:05. I've given you a lot of information. I'm going to send this PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to send the actual PowerPoint to you today because I want you to be able to go back through these slides if you want to, and to actually look at what falls in each category again. And I want you to think over the next couple of weeks as you're moving forward, which centers you're using for what. What center am I in right now? Is this working for me? I want you to look at the numbers that you wrote down for where you are in these centers, and we're going to talk about them when you come back. And notice where you're strong and where you're not. And noticing is the first step, right? I'm really strong here. I'm really not strong there. But also notice if you understand why. Like, for example, somebody else might be handling one of these centers so well that for you in your day-to-day life, you don't do a lot with it, but it's a healthy center in your community. So this work is only as valuable as the time you give it. And I invite you to find some time over the next couple of weeks to think about it so that when we come back at the middle of the month, we can talk through what your initial impressions were and whether anything has changed. I want to just give you a couple more minutes in case you have a question about anything that we talked about today. If you have a question, I want to make sure I take a minute to answer it for you. Okay.
You know, this could turn into a big topic conversation. So maybe we save it for next time, but I would love to hear you say more about expressing as our great big God, as opposed to God expressing as us. And I think I know what you mean, but I would love to flesh that out.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick answer to that. But yes, I think that's a really important piece to talk about on a regular basis. Um, it's really easy to say to ourselves, I'm God expressing. That's easy. This is what it looks like when God expresses as me. I look like Ariana. I do the things that Ariana does. It helps me to remember that it's a God heart that's expressing through me. And I live a certain way as the human that is God expressing. That's very different than recognizing that I am thinking with the mind of God. That this is so much more than just the human way that I take this great big God and channel a little bit of God through my little bitty brain, right? Because I'm God expressing as one little pinky of God versus in my capacity, in my potential, I am the whole of God expressing. And that is a letting go of who I think I am. It's letting go of the identity that I claim as me. And for me, Jackie, it happens when most often I can get there most easily when I meditate. What I know is that there is a stream of life that is flowing beneath all of the emerging aspects that we see, that is wide and broad and sweet and warm, and it's a place I can submerge myself in and become one with. And when I operate from there, when I think from that place, I think differently, because it's not about Ariana. It's about the oneness that we all are. And that is not oh gosh, I think I'll do that now. Unless you practice that every day, it's something that takes time. It takes time to peel back the layers. Who's looking out through my eyes? Who is that? This is Ariana is who I see in front of me with my eyes. Who's looking out from my eyes? And it's going to that which I think for me is the great work of life. I think it's the work that allows us to move from life to death to life to death, is when we start realizing it's never death, because there is a oneness that we are. And I don't know in our lifetime that we ever fully figure out, very few of us, I bet, fully figure out how to get there consistently. But there is a part of us that is so much more than what we can even imagine. And being in pursuit of that as leaders, how do we teach it to other people if we are not doing the work ourselves? So that's the short answer, my friend. That's the short answer. All right. I love you all. I appreciate you. I am gifted by your time and the opportunity to spend this time with you. And I will be speaking to you from Florida when we gather again. The only thing that would change that is if I'm at the hospital having a baby, and it won't be me. Otherwise, I expect I will have a new baby by then,
Um,
and I'll be looking forward to seeing you and to hearing more about your observations. And I'll send this stuff out to you today so you can take a closer look at it. All right. All right,
Thank
friend.
you.
You're so welcome. Have an awesome day.
Bye bye.